So we got Alabama, Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl is moved from Pasadena to AT&T Stadium, which means that we're going to get the Cotton Bowl and the Rose Bowl. We hope the Cotton Bowl and the Rose Bowl at AT&T Stadium back-to-back days. All right. Alabama opened as a 17.5-point favorite. Like, I was talking about this with my boss at Fox Sports, and he's like, what do you think they open at? I think 18. I think 18 is a funny number. 17, and then 17.5 is what we hit on. So, cool. And then the number moved. And then it moved again. And right now, it's at 20.5. Nobody, absolutely nobody, expects Notre Dame to be competitive against Alabama in the Rose Bowl. So much so that there's a group of us that are like, why not just give Alabama the bye? Which led me to make an analogy about the replacements. And Ron, having watched the replacements here lately, I want to see if you think this fits. For those of you who aren't familiar, the NFL went on strike in 1987. Owners were going to play games anyway because they had this upstart USFL that they really wanted to keep at bay. And turned out the USFL, like the World Football League, like every other league that has come since the NFL merged in 1969 with the AFL, hadn't been worth a damn in comparison to the NFL. But they went and got, replacement players, or the more derogatory term, scabs, to go play in the same jerseys as the dudes that you wanted to see play NFL football. And those dudes had a good time. And the messaging behind the replacements, I do not agree with. Like, adult me has some sincere problems with how we are labeling labor versus ownership. But there is one scene in the replacements that I think fits for what Notre Dame is looking at right now. It is Jimmy McGinty huddling the team up in the second half as they're down to a group of players that have crossed the picket line to go play for their team, who understand that this is the last football game that they are going to play. This is the last half of pro football they're ever going to play. So McGinty makes that clear to them. This team that you're playing ought to be afraid of you because there is no tomorrow for you. And that makes you all very dangerous people. And I believe in that principle most of all. You do not want the smoke from somebody who has nothing to lose. You don't want the smoke from a wounded animal. Notre Dame got embarrassed in its first and probably only chance to win an ACC title, conference title at all. So much so that there are people that are saying Notre Dame should not be in the playoff. And now they are the sacrificial lamb to the machine that is the Tide. I believe that if they approach this game as if they have nothing to lose, we could get us a ball game. Ron, do you think that analogy fits, or am I off with that?
I think that it's really poetic. Like you touched me with those words, but I don't think that you can apply this underdog spirit to Notre Dame football. I think that they are too big of an organization and a brand to be able to look at Alabama and think of themselves as the little giants. Like it just does not work. Notre Dame has to believe that they have to believe in the myth of, being a golden domer to perpetuate that. Like they're not small time. Like we know that they've had hard times. We know that they get rolled a lot, but they're also the squad that took down modern day Clemson. They're going to look at Alabama and say, cool, we got a shot. But not because, we're some of this scrappy little upstart. Like, we are expletive Notre Dame. And that's how they're going to roll into it. Now, you're right. They might feel they have their backs against the wall. But once again, if everybody, no matter how big you are, you could be King Arthur with the sword and the scabbard. But if somebody says, you don't have the odds, congratulations. You should have never doubted me.
Can you say we are expletive Notre Dame when you are winless in New Year's Six Bowls during this century? And that's as far back as I chose to look. Like, they lost the Orange Bowl. They lost the Sugar Bowl. They lost the BCS championship. They lost the Cotton Bowl. They look like they're about to lose the Rose Bowl. Like, who are you if we put you in these games and you continue to catch L's? Like, as much shade as people want to throw at Oklahoma being in these positions, Oklahoma won a national championship in 2000. Does anybody know the last time that Notre Dame won a national championship?
I don't remember.
I think it was 88. All right, let me go check.
Go
ahead.
Anyway, Notre Dame is gassed up, and if whenever the time that I don't think there's going to be a time anywhere in the near future, as long as they continue to be a squad that
I was right, 88. Sorry,
good on you. That as long as they continue to be a squad that every committee will give a shot at the national championship when they finish the season with one loss, they're going to feel that their privilege is earned. They're going to continue that. They're never going to run out of fuel for the fire of thinking that Notre Dame is a top tier school. And like right now they are, but looking at like the people in the playoffs right now, it's like Notre Dame is better than they are last year, but they're not, I don't think that they are a great squad. Clemson is not as good as they were last year. Ohio State's not as good as they were last year. Alabama is much better than they were last year. So yeah, they're gonna roll into it. They might look at it as an uphill battle, but not that they're an underdog.
Man, I don't know. Like, I feel this way when we talk about Oklahoma football, especially like last year going into Peach Bowl, right? It's a similar spot. Right? And I would argue that the 2018 team was better than the 2019 team, and the 2017 team was better than both of those.
Mm-hmm.
But in thinking about Notre Dame and where they ought to think about themselves, I can't make someone reasonable. I wish I could, because I think the world would be a much cooler place if we could do reason. But that's not what we're going to be able to do with Domers. Okay? If you go into this Rose Bowl and you get destroyed, how do you feel about yourself? That is where I would want to start the conversation with them. Would that be enough for you to be like, we're good, we're not that good? Like, the only dyed-in-the-wool and smart Notre Dame fan that I know, smart meaning the man actually goes and reads about the team, reads about what's going on, and also takes a look at college football, is KJRH sports anchor, sports director, Caden McFarland. Very cool dude. Had him on the show before. And after Notre Dame got destroyed 34-10 in the ACC championship game, a game in which they didn't score their first touchdown until the fourth quarter in garbage time, he said, no, we do not want Bama. Because I think, smart college football fans, like the ones that are smart about Oklahoma, most of the ones I know, were like, no, we don't want any part of a college football playoff. Please, no. We'd like to win a bowl game this year. And even this one that they're supposed to play against Florida is, for me, a pick'em, where the over-under is lower than this, but I still think the over-under is like 100. Because Todd Grantham hasn't been fired yet. So that means that Engage 8 is still, going to be called every other play. And Oklahoma's defense is actually pretty good the last 7 games. They've won 7 in a row, right? I think that when we talk about Notre Dame, too often we're talking about who the quarterback is and who the head coach is, and not enough about what the defenses look like. That said, Brian Kelly said we're a different football team than we were in 2012, and I said I hope so. I'm listening on the Zoom call too with Saban, and Saban's like, yeah, we changed some stuff too. I'm like, man, you know what? They did. And I was thinking about this. Notre Dame's running a 3-4 with Bob Diaco as defensive coordinator, who I think won the Broyles Award that year. Bob Diaco just got fired from Purdue after doing a good job at La Tech and being an analyst at Oklahoma. He had Manti Te'o, among others, in the middle of his defense. And that Notre Dame team beat Oklahoma at home. Same night James Harden got traded from the Thunder to the Rockets. That's how long ago that was. But you know what Alabama was doing then? Alabama was still playing murder ball. They were still running play action off of legit eye formation stuff. Now to see what Nick Saban has become offensively is to marvel at Nick Saban. Because listening to him on this Zoom call, Ron, I still hear a defense coordinator. That's all I hear. I hear a guy say, we evolved with the sport. We evolved with the sport. Like, that's what we did on the field. Like, we didn't change our culture or any of those things that make us into the character team we are. We evolved with the sport. And I was also thinking about it in this way. You know, the first, like, dyed-in-the-wool Power 5 team to convert to the nickel was, as a base defense? Alabama. They did that almost immediately after getting shown up in the 2011, I think it's 2011 National Championship game. What was it?
I'll look it up.
Because I think they were playing LSU. But this is like when they go from their 260-pound middle linebackers to quite literally just playing with a star, a nickel, every snap. He's noticing what other teams are doing to him before he's noticing what his teams are doing to them, is my point there. I also have to...
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's the point that I'm getting at, no matter when they actually made that change. But he didn't actually make that change to the offense, not for real, until Lane Kiffin got there. And I can only imagine what it was like for Lane Kiffin to try to convince Nick Saban that this is what they needed to do, and then probably points to Johnny Manziel and said, so we can do that. Like, we don't have to get that done to us anymore, sure, but we can do that to other teams if you just let me go get Blake Sims.
I was about to say, if you let me give me the opportunity to have a Heisman level quarterback and we can fly. Because I remember that time too. It's one of those that, man, Nick Saban really these are the losses that Nick Saban has caught. And it's Heisman winner, Heisman winner, Heisman winner, Heisman runner up, Heisman winner. It's like, wow, I guess that's what it takes to beat Nick Saban. And then what happens? Nick Saban says, cool, I want that. And then does that for the next 5-6 years.
Other part about Nick Saban that I think is underrated is he's probably the best secondary coach in the world. When I watch his kids play technique and I watch their footwork, I'm always amazed. And you can tell that that's a defensive back that is teaching other dudes how to play defensive back so well that I swore up and down D. Milner was going to be the truth. I swore up and down he's going to be the truth in the NFL. No, I was right about Minkah Fitzpatrick. Good for me. But how many dudes have we been wrong about that played defensive back at Alabama?
Not very many.
Yeah, like Trayvon Diggs is playing with that reputation right now for the Cowboys because I watch too much Cowboys football for my own good. But outside of that, the dudes that come out of that system know what they are doing, and the dudes that play nickel in that system become all pros in the NFL. It's that good. It's that awesome. I'm also noticing what Brian Kelly has allowed his team to evolve into. You were the first person to actually put this out there and acknowledge this in a meaningful way. So I want to give Ron all the props in the world on this. I said, what do you think of Ian Book? Right? So many people want to make that dude a drop back pocket passer, right? An old school NFL white dude at quarterback. And Ron was like, no, you put this kid from California out in space. He's cooking. Why are they having him stand back there? Just an athlete, as they say, an athlete. And what? It's like Brian Kelly heard you. Because as soon as they started moving him out, and my favorite play on Madden ain't levels because I'm not that kind of quarterback. My favorite play is flood to one side or the other. Play action boot. Give me those. Because now I have a quarterback that can also hurt you. And I think if Notre Dame can do that against Alabama, they got a shot because Florida exposed just how good Alabama's defense is not. We'd all been talking about how great Alabama's defense was leading up to this SEC championship game. And then Kyle Trask throws for 408. And there are 200-yard receivers for Florida. And they put up damn near 500 yards and 46 points. Notre Dame is capable. I just don't know if they can do it.
Yeah, I was cold. I've been cold on Kyle Trask all season. I shouldn't be. That dude's been whipping it around. He's good. Today I was listening to College Football Nerds. They're very good. And they said something that they said it in such a fashion, in a way that we have talked about for years, and that it's easier to play offense than defense.
Right.
But they said that there's a limit to how good your defense can be compared to how good an offense can be. No matter what kind of scheme you run, no matter what kind of athletes that you have, if the offense has as good athletes or better, you can only be so good. And that's when we talked about Nick Saban making the adjustment from being a murder ball member to somebody that creates Heisman winning quarterbacks. To me, that game is a perfect example of that. Is that and also the Ole Miss game is that if somebody has your number on offense, they're going to continue to hit it. So it's your job to match them point for point. So you're right that like Alabama has a weakness, or they might not be as strong as they'd like to be. But do you think that Notre Dame is going to pressure them as hard as Florida did? Because
in a different way,
mm-hmm.
right? Because like the way that they were using Kyle Pitts to free up Kadarius Toney for one-on-one coverage is what you're going to have to do. I just don't know that they have a Kadarius Toney. Maybe Javon McKinley's that guy. Maybe Avery Davis is that guy. But they are loaded at tight end, right? Ben Skowronek and Michael Mayer are outstanding. And Notre Dame has become something of a tight end U, if not an offensive line U. So if they're able to match those dudes up against Malachi Moore in the slot, Brian Branch on the slot, and win, you got a different ballgame. Difference is, I thought Brian Branch and Malachi Moore were good enough to take away Kyle Pitts. Now, I'm expecting a lot of 2 true freshmen. That's on me, right? I put too much on them as true freshmen. Going against a third-year player who 100% knows what he's capable of and is bigger than them. So maybe you try to take advantage of that if you are Kelly, because that is where the game is for me offensively. If you can get Michael Mayer or Ben Skowronek to take away Malachi Moore or get matched up against Jordan Battle or Brian Branch, you can win. You have to also just go after Josh Jobe, because you don't want no parts of Patrick Surtain. You don't want those. You don't want that problem. That dude might win the Thorpe Award. He was on my finalist list. He's that good. But you don't have to, right? That's the thing. You don't have to throw at Patrick Surtain. You're just going to have to put Josh Jobe out there and say, beat us. If you can beat us, we lose this game. That also is a good question for me to see answered as it relates to ACC versus SEC. Because one of the things that we lamented this year was the lack of common opponents, even though it didn't matter if you were a group of 5 team, because Louisiana beats Iowa State. Coastal Carolina beats Louisiana, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, I want to see if the second best team in the ACC even holds a candle to the best team in the SEC and what that might look like. Because then I think we could talk about maybe the ACC is closing the gap. Maybe, probably not, but maybe. So, score prediction. What do you think the point differential is? Not necessarily how many points you think is going to be scored between Notre Dame and Alabama.
Ask that one more time.
What do you think the point differential is going to be between Notre Dame and Alabama in the Rose Bowl?
And I don't say this with a lot of joy, but I'm going to say damn near 30. Because looking at the teams that I would not say that compare them to, but that had the same kind of eyeball test, Alabama killing them, but I say killing them, but they're just a very dominating squad. I don't see where Notre Dame can get into a dogfight or a shootout with them. They got to pick one, and it's going to be 30 both ways.
To your point, the last time Saban and Kelly, Notre Dame and Alabama squared up, BCS championship game, Alabama beat them in Miami 42-14. Right at 30 points. I would also add this. If Kyron Williams can be of use to you, not good, just of use to you, against Christian Harris and Dylan Moses in the middle, with Christian Barmore and DJ Dale in the middle, then you have more than a puncher's chance. You ought to win that football game because their front 7 is really good. Front 6 at Alabama is really good. But Kyron Williams, I thought, was really good, and then he didn't do much against Notre Dame. As a matter of fact, it was flipped. Travis Etienne couldn't run the ball at all against Notre Dame in South Bend, and then rushed for 10 or 124 on 10 against them in the ACC championship game. Meanwhile, Kyron Williams had like 50 yards rushing total, and he was a monster, like with a 50-yard run to open the game in South Bend. So that's one that I'm looking at.